HBCUs will never be the biggest benefactor of NIL. However, the SWAC opting into the latest settlement does allow them to use it more competitively amongst each other. Oh yeah, it's locked on HBCU. Play my music.
You are Locked On HBCU, your daily podcast covering HBCU sports. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, family? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On HBCU podcast, your number one daily one-stop shop for everything HBCU athletics, Monday through Friday. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I, of course, am Darrion Gray, a.k.a. the Mouth of the South, Texas Southern alum and former TSU Herald Sports editor and current contributing writer at USA Today's Saints Wire. Thank you for going on this journey with me, making Locked On HBCU your first listen of the day every day. And remember, just because the mic cuts off does not mean that the journey is over. It just means it's time to follow me on Twitter at South Exclusive. Starts with an S and ends with an S. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. We'll wrap up today's episode by taking a look at Douglas Whitler, a true Morehouse man, landing on his feet just like a cat, and he is the newest head coach of Allen men's basketball. In segment 2, Clark Atlanta versus Valdosta State is going to open up their seasons at on week 0. And to me, this is a prove-it game for both universities. Let's kick it off with a little bit of news that has taken over the college landscape, and that is the House versus NCAA settlement that the specifically the SWAC has opted into. You do also have Maryland Eastern Shore in the MEAC that is opted into it, along with the Northeast Conference. And then also Morgan State. I haven't heard about Howard, Delaware State, Norfolk State, even though I do think Delaware State is going to opt in. I expect Delaware State to opt in because Deshaun Jackson has had his he's been vocal about how to work with NIL and about how there needs to be some sort of salary cap. And I do believe that he will opt in, or he will try to push to opt in. I haven't heard much about Norfolk State, Howard, North Carolina Central. I haven't heard much about them, but we do have confirmation that Morgan State and University of Maryland Eastern Shore are going to opt in as universities, and the SWAC is going to opt in as a conference. So I don't want to give you all of the basics of what it could mean and what that. I want to tell you straight up how this allows them to be competitive. What I do have to do first is give you some sort of baseline around this. There are multiple shows that will break it down at length. I'm not here to do that today. I want to talk about specifically how it impacts HBCUs and how it benefits some, but hurts others. We're going to be real about this, right? So one thing that they are going to try to do is limit boosters. As a result of this settlement, they're going to try to limit boosters. I don't know how successfully that they'll do that, but they are going to try to limit boosters, and it's going to be just business purposes. Look, at the end of the day, you can dress it up anyway. All this really means, in my opinion, is that I love bringing up the Bryce Underwood situation because that, to me, was the most disgusting display of NIL. It's just some things you understand happen, but you don't want to see it. Everybody isn't meant to be in the kitchen. And I'm okay admitting that in this situation, I'm not meant to be in the kitchen. I just simply am not. So when it comes to Bryce Underwood, he was essentially recruited financially. He was financially recruited publicly to Michigan. That will not happen. You do have to have some sort of business purpose, or at least fake the business purpose. Michigan was just out here saying, hey, here's the money. We dangling the money. That's not going to happen. That'll change. But overall, it's going to be about pushing straight from university payments. Direct from the university payments. And it's going to be a salary cap of $20 million. Do not expect the HBCUs to hit the salary cap, but I do feel like that's too big of an idea for me not to tell you about. And the salary cap will grow each year. Just think like the NFL. The more revenue you make, the more the salary cap is going to grow, but it will probably never get lower. Now to the SWAC. Oh, I'm sorry. And lastly, they do have to pay back $2.8 billion, $2.8 billion to former student athletes. So they have to do that over the next 10 years. They said the SWAC's going to give up 30 million. I first seen that, I said, dang, what? 30 million? What? That's crazy. Then I did the math, and that's 1% of how much that the NCAA is going to have to shell out. I feel a little bit less inclined to complain once I see it's 1%. The biggest thing for the SWAC, in my opinion, the biggest thing for the SWAC is not only do you get an increased roster limit, so you go from 85 players on the roster as your cap to now being able to have 105 players on your roster. So that's already beneficial. But then secondly, and most importantly, the SWAC removed the scholarship limit. Not all universities did that. So if you opt in, if you opt into the settlement, so that means you're choosing to say, we're going to follow these guidelines, we're going to follow the structure, right? If you opt into the settlement, then you do get a roster bonus, a roster boost, not a bonus, a roster boost. And that goes from 85 to 105. That's what that boost does for you. But not everybody is going to all of a sudden get more scholarships. And this is where HBCUs, or excuse me, this is where the SWAC specifically is going to benefit against each other. Some schools, some conferences that opted in said, all right, we're going to increase the roster limit, but you still can only have 63 scholarships. That is not the case with the SWAC. They're going to open up. You can have as many scholarships as you want. That's a great thing for those with deep pockets. If you're telling me I can boost my roster, that's great. If you're telling me that I can boost my scholarships as long as I can afford it, that's a whole different conversation. And now you unlock something. If you're telling me you can boost up how many players I can have, that just means I got more bodies. Maybe I can have more depth. Maybe I can have more players at this specific position because I'm not sure who I want to start, or I may have a heavy rotation here. That's what boosting the roster does. It allows me to just have more. Boosting the roster allows me to have more flexibility on how I use players, more flexibility on how deep my rotation is, probably at the defensive line specifically is somewhere I could think about that being coming into play. But if you're telling me I can have more scholarships as long as I can afford it, I know some of my peers can't. I may be able to afford 75 scholarships. Somebody may only be able to afford the 63. That's 12 up. I got scholarships. I can offer that. That is a bargaining chip. If I, Texas Southern, come up and say I can offer you a scholarship, specifically a full ride, and then Prairie View A&M says we're going to have you as a walk-on, and then granted, I know PV got some money behind them, but still, follow me. If ITSU walk up and I say I have this scholarship for you, and PV says we have a walk-on for you, even if it's a preferred walk-on, I have the more advantageous deal. And in having that more advantageous deal, I'm going to get more recruits. If I have 82 scholarships and you have 64, that means I have more bargaining chips than you. That means I can step to people and say, you don't have to pay for college more often than you can. So that's the biggest difference to me. When I'm looking at the House settlement, I could care less about the $2.8 billion that they have to pay back or the $30 million that has to come from the SWAC. I could care less about the salary cap because I don't think that HBCUs are going to hit the $20 million salary cap when it comes to NIL. I could care less about all of that. The thing that I care about, the thing that I think is the most relevant to the SWAC is the fact that those schools that have more money are going to have more scholarships. At the end of the day, if I got 105 players, you got 105 players, that means we have the same amount of bodies. But if I got 78 players on scholarship, if I have 79, 80 players on scholarship and you have 65, 66, now we're talking about a recruiting war, and I'm winning the recruiting war as far as quantity. Let's say that. It all comes down to quantity, right? You could have 65 scholarships and they all top tier players. And I could have 82 and only half of those are top tier players. So it's not about how you use it. It's about how much you have to use. And that's the biggest benefit. Because if I can afford to give more people scholarships, if I can afford to give out more full rides, then I'm going to afford more scholarship players. I'm going to use it. If I can afford it, I'm going to use it. It's that simple. And I think that at the end of the day, this gives a huge recruiting boost to those who can actually afford to use that boost. Um, this is strong. You mix that with the NIL money coming directly from the schools, those with bigger pockets are going to be favored here. It's always been that way. This is just another example of it. But if you are an HBCU with bigger pockets, you have an advantage over your peer. You may not have an advantage over the FBS school. You may not have an advantage over certain FCS schools. But if we're talking about winning celebration bowls, if we're talking about this bubble that does exist, the people you're competing against are infinitely more important than Arkansas State. They're infinitely more important than Incarnate Word. Trust me, as TSU, I care way more about Grambling than I do Stephen F. Austin. So when I'm comparing what I can do on NILs, I'm not comparing to any of those PWIs. I'm solely comparing myself to other HBCUs. And if I have a leg up on them, I have a leg up on making it to the Celebration Bowl in theory. You just got to make sure you recruit the right players. As we push forward, Clark Atlanta is going against Valdosta State in week 0. I believe that this is a prove-it game for not only Clark Atlanta, but also Valdosta, and I'll tell you why as we continue with Locked On HBCU. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Have you ever checked your bank account and said, this doesn't seem like where it's supposed to be? Now, hopefully when you said that, it was higher than you wanted, but I think a lot of us have said that and it was lower than we wanted. Now, if you have Monarch Money, you won't have that surprise because you can keep track. And you know what? Maybe you forgot to check that app and maybe you forgot to check that app. With Monarch Money, it's not I checked 3 of the 5, I'll be okay. It's one app. It's really 5 apps in one. That's really what it is. You can have this app, this app, this app, this app, but it all boils down to Monarch Money, and it makes it so much easier than having to go to multiple apps every week, every month. Just go to Monarch Money. It's a financial command center. It's about helping you build your wealth, not just manage your money. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for half off your first year. As we continue rolling on today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you for making this your first listen of the day. Every day for your second listen, make sure you're checking out Locked On NBA. We could have a closeout game tomorrow. We could have a closeout game, or we have a closeout game. We could have an end of a series tomorrow. Game 6 in Indiana. Can they stay alive? We'll see, but you have to hear about it first on Locked On NBA to know what to look for. I know what I'm looking for when week 0 rolls around. Clark Atlanta versus Valdosta State. I think that this is going to be a big-time matchup. Valdosta has had the number of HBCUs. They have had the number of multiple HBCUs when it comes to the playoffs. They ended Miles' season last year. They ended Virginia Union season last year. They've ended Virginia Union season, I think, 2, maybe 3 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago. But they've had the number of HBCUs for a while. Let's see if that extends off to Clark Atlanta in week 0. But for a game in week 0 with no stakes, this game surely does mean a lot to me. Even if it's just temporary, even if it's only part of the puzzle, right? Like if you're building a puzzle, you miss one piece, you didn't complete the puzzle. So the puzzle is every single week is a new piece revealed. And when it's all said and done, now you have the picture. But week 0 is going to go a long way as I begin to build this puzzle, as I begin to paint this picture, as I begin to figure out, screw the analogies, as I begin to figure out who is Valdosta State, which I don't really care about because they're not an HBCU. But as I go on to think about who is Clark Atlanta, those questions will not be answered in week 1, but I certainly will find an answer in week 1. That's the way that it goes. We got to be real. When it comes down to week 1 or week 0, whatever, the first game of the season, when it comes down to it, we understand that we will not judge a team based off what they do week 1 entirely. But that caveat is important. That caveat is important. we won't judge a team completely based off the first game, but we will overreact. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm above it. I will overreact and I will tell you, man, this team sucks. No, I will say that way too. Uh, that's not my style. Let me just say that. That's not my style. But it's just how the game goes, guys. If they come out and it's a blowout against Valdosta, I can guarantee you we will question, does Clark Atlanta still have it? Are they the same team as last year? If they come out and they beat Valdosta, we'll say, uh-oh, Clark Atlanta is something to deal with. Now, hopefully, the game is close. The game is a good game, and we'll walk away feeling good about both teams. But a lot of times in the first game of the year, that's just simply not how it works. Ideally, you would walk away saying, oh, yeah, both of those teams look good. I can't say that that'll happen. I just can't. It just feels like that's rarely what happens. We walk away with some sort of takeaway, whether it's LSU Clemson, whether it's Texas Ohio State, whether it's Alabama Florida State. Like those are big week 1 games. And the chances are at least 2 of the 3 will walk away saying, about one team featured in there. I don't know about that Arch Manning. It's Arch Manning's first year as a starter. First year having a week 1 start. First time going against a top tier team like Ohio State. Yeah, I don't know, man. Y'all sure Arch the number 1 seed or the number 1 pick? Or maybe, yeah, Arch Manning's the number 1 pick. Neither one of those things should be true after week 1, but they will be said. One of them will be said. That's just how the game goes, right? So I'm not going to treat this any different. If Clark Atlanta comes out there and they look good, we're going to say that. But they have to prove that they are not a Cinderella team from a year ago. And that's going to be very difficult because they won't have David Wright, or there's a chance they won't have David Wright. That's what I'm looking for. That's the biggest intrigue around Clark Atlanta, not only in that week 0 matchup, but going into 2025. Will they have David Wright? Will they have their former all SIAC quarterback? Will they have the 2-time back-to-back reigning SIAC player of the year? Will they have that guy leading their team? If they do, I'm looking at them way differently. If they don't, I got to figure some things out. Like, what does Teddy Keaton look like as a successful head coach without David Wright? Because we haven't seen it. We've seen 2-win seasons. We've seen 1-win seasons. We've seen successful seasons as Wright has become an SIAC Offensive Player of the Year. The last 2 seasons, his last one at Allen and then the last one at Clark Atlanta, have been successful seasons. And guess what? Your quarterback was great. I'm not trying to blame him for that synergy. But when that synergy is no longer available to you, whether that's this year or if it's the year after, when that synergy is no longer available to you, what do you do then? What is next? Can't say I have that. Can't say I have that answer. But let's say that Wright does play. Let's say the Wright does play. This is a big opportunity because it's a statement game. Playing Valdosta is a statement game. I understand that they lost Tremaine Jackson, and that's what they have to prove. They lost their head coach. Can they still be good? In Jackson's first year, they weren't that good, but there was pressure on the coach after that anyway. So if they lose to an HBCU, which they don't usually do, they got a nice streak going against HBCUs. That's the type of streak that, if broken, will make an immediate reaction. But anyway, if he can go up against Valdosta, David Wright can go up against Valdosta and perform well, we're going to be talking about him. I'm just saying. We're looking for the 3-peat because he went against Bethune-Cookman last year, and I understand that that's a jump in subdivision. Well, this is a jump in competition because this is one of the best D2 teams in recent years. Has been consistently. And in week 0, when you just came off of a championship game appearance, that reputation will precede you. That reputation will be how we talk about you. And if David Wright is able to come in and carve them up, he'll be the first one to do it before, let's say they do fall off. We won't know that when David Wright does it. And quite frankly, where teams are when you beat them or when you play against them does way more to shape the narrative than what they end up being, unless it's a drastic difference of we thought this team was garbage and they end up being great, or we thought this team was going to be great and they ended up being garbage. As long as they stay in the same relative space, or as long as they're just middle of the pack, We're going to speak about who we thought they were. We're going to speak of your feet as who we thought they were. How am I saying this? We're going to speak about what you did in the same light of how we view that team at that moment. I hope I said that the right way. But that's what I want to see, man. At the end of the day, neither side, for neither side does one victory or one loss determine their season. For neither side are you going to walk away saying, I know exactly who that team is after 60 minutes of action. It won't happen. It won't happen. I'm just being honest with you. It's very possible that neither one of these teams are good. It's very possible that both of these teams are good. But I can tell you what's for sure, we won't know where they fall after just 1 week, especially with the amount of questions that each team has. I hope David Wright's able to get, I think it's going to be appealed. I think it's still unknown. I haven't heard any finality on that. So to me, David Wright is still going to appeal the decision to not give him a redshirt year due to injury. And I think that he will have a good case, and I expect him to play as long as that is the only obstacle that he is facing. But it's still kind of unknown exactly what's going on. So as we push forward, we talk about Wright and Keaton going from Allen to the A. Well, what about a head coach who's going from the A to Allen? No, it's not Clark Atlanta. It's Morehouse to Allen. But Douglas Whitler is still making that jump nevertheless. Let's break it down as we continue with today's episode of Locked On HBCU. As we're wrapping up today's episode of Locked On HBCU, I appreciate you making this your first listen of the day every day, making it all the way to segment 3, and I thank you 2 times for that. Thank you. Thank you. Now, Douglas Whitler, a true Morehouse man, just like the caddy is, lands on his feet. Now, Whitler made the move from Morehouse to Allen this offseason, and he didn't stay out of work long. And with his resume, he shouldn't. At the end of the day, he should not be a guy who is out of work for a long time. He has proven himself to be a quality head coach. He has proven himself to be a winning head coach. And he has proven himself to be a marketable, I don't want to say marketable, an attractive option. He just has. Because if you look at what he's done over the last 4 years at Morehouse, and you look at what Allen has done over the last 4 years while he was at Morehouse, I'll tell you what, I'll pick him up right away. Allen had 1 year with 15 victories. Other than that, I don't know if they have 15 victories combined in the 3 other seasons. A 15-win season is nothing when it comes to Douglas Whitler. He's had a 17-win season. He's had an 18-win streak in a season. He's had multiple, I think, 2 20-win seasons. The idea of just winning 15 games, nothing. So if he can come in and replicate what he was able to do at Morehouse, this is going to be a really good hire. Even if he doesn't win a championship, which he wasn't able to do at the house, he was always competitive. He has multiple SIAC East divisional titles. He's been a really good coach, and he led Morehouse to a lot of success. Quite frankly, if I can go pick up a coach from within my conference that people are questioning why he's available, I'm feeling good about it. I'm always feeling good about that. And I won't harp on this side of it, but when you pick up a coach inside the conference, you must wonder if he's going to be able to bring any of his talent with him. That's something to watch. In the opening, not press conference, but the introductory presser, I guess I said press release, the introductory press release, they highlighted specifically Brandon Peters, who was an all-freshman member, and then also Cedric Taylor III. Taylor is gone. He's at Howard. I don't think that he's going to jump ship and go to Allen. I think he may have actually, as I'm thinking about it, he may have actually left before. Let me see. He may have left before Whitler. He transferred a month ago. Let me see. Douglas. I think Whitler's been gone for a couple of months. But anyway, the point is Douglas Whitler, that was April. Yeah, so it was 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later. So if that hire would have happened a little quicker, I don't know. But anyway, the point is Taylor is gone. Peters isn't. You might be able to get Peters. I'm not going to harp on that. It's not concrete enough for me to really delve into it, but it's something to watch. As for Allen, it's been a lot of pivoting this offseason with this specific job. You hire Sean Walker, or excuse me, no, you have Sean Walker step down. I meant to say you fire Sean Walker, but Talladega women's basketball coach Andre Payne says, "Yeah, I'll take this job." He comes over, he's switching over genders. He's going from women's basketball to men's basketball. Everything's peachy. He spent about 2 weeks or whatever, or 2 months or whatever with the job, and then they say, "You know what, Talladega?" Talladega says, "I'm not ready to let you go." So I get you. You want to jump up from the NAIA level to the D2 level. I get it. I get it. I get it. But what if I tell you that you can run this whole ship? What if I tell you that you don't have to just be the women's basketball coach? You can still do that, but also be my athletic director. How'd you feel about that? And I'll probably throw some extra dollars at you too. Man, yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, I'll take it. Without a doubt. What is Payne supposed to do? But I think it's interesting that you go from Payne stepping down, stepping away from your job. You have to find somebody else and you land on Whitler. What a good hire. What a really good hire. I already talked about the winning record. You already look at coming from Morehouse and what he was able to do in those 4 years, getting multiple divisional titles. You love what he was able to produce at the house. And if you can produce it at Allen, this is a successful hire that you would make 10 times out of 10. It's simple. It's simple. You had to pivot quite a bit, but you ended up landing on a real quality coach, a coach that people are wondering why he got fired in the first place. What's happening? And Morehouse has a culture. Let's be very clear. Douglas Whitler specifically comes from that culture. It was a background of years upon years upon years. I'm talking decades, decades of culture that's built up. That's foundational. I think that this is going to be a really good hire. If nothing else, he should be able to build a foundation with the Allen Yellow Jackets. So on Friday, we will talk about PV's recruiting. I just ended up not wanting to talk about it that day or today. So we're going to talk about it on Friday. Hopefully you enjoy your Juneteenth tomorrow. I'll check back in with you on the 20th. In the meantime, in between time, until the next time that we hear each other, family, take care, stay blessed. Peace.